There are a lot of missiles today, Constantine.
Yeah, unfortunately, the today it was a really hard day for Ukraine. I woke up right after going to sleep with my brothers messaging me if we have around 16 Starlinks at our warehouse in Kharkiv at the moment, and he messaged me if he can use one of them and if it's prepaid, so he can use the connection. And I told him, no, you gotta plug in your card. And when we deliver Starlinks, the Ukrainian troops they have to add their cards. We don't provide recurring payments because we supplied a lot of Starlinks right now, and if we would be paying for everyone, the only thing that I would do is just fundraise for those Starlinks.
Yeah, they're expensive
Uh,
too. But I marked
yeah,
I marked on the map these two missile strikes. I think they're both S-300, but I'm not sure. But they took out two power plants. These two power plants.
so the key ones that you're looking at is the ones to the east, the one that is with a white circle.
Yeah,
That's one of the largest power plants in Ukraine. If you exclude the nuclear ones, it's called TETS 5.
yeah.
It's really huge in Spicachin. It's on my way from my home to my dacha. Um, this is a Eshar tact. I'm sorry, I'm switching from Ukrainian to English all the time.
Yeah, this
Mm,
that's where that the missile hit right here. And and it hit this one too. They've hit this power plant so many times. Like,
Yeah, that's 5. This is what I was talking about. This
yeah,
is that's 5. It's one of the largest power plants in Ukraine. The thermal power plants. It can run on natural gas. It can run on oil. It can run on multiple fuels, and they're targeting it. And the one that you showed, the other one, as Har, on the road to Chuhuyev. I used to serve. That's where probably 40% of my military service went. It's on the road to Chuhuyev. And it's a smaller one, but it still provides a lot. It provides Chuhuyev itself, which is an important military city for Ukraine. The one that is in blue right now on the map. We have 92nd Brigade stations over there. Like the city itself is not where the brigade is stations. It's a bit on the right. You can see like military installations. Probably even looking at, yeah. This is Kulugina Bashkirovka. That's where you see the yellow stuff. That's where the main military base is. That's we call it polygon, where we actually practice shooting, and have the maneuvers. It's nothing special. It's not like I'm opening something up here. It's not like it's some kind of OPSEC information, just general open source information that everyone knows. And trust me, a lot of Russian officers have been there. And I've served. If anyone is interested, I'm sorry for drawing attention to myself. If you zoom in to where you are right now,
yep,
uh, uh, and you see the airfield, right?
yep.
I've served on the airfield for around 4 months. This is Chuhuyev Airfield. It's one of the critical points to. It's like a gate for the how you say for highly mobile troops to send them into the Donbas. When we served in 2014, it was used to like a base, basically. For example, special forces come in. We pack them in the base, refuel them, get them the equipment. They get their heavy stuff such as armored vehicles into the truck, into the plane. One plane comes, another one comes, and then they drop them in the Kramatorsk, and then they go further. Or you have special forces such as we had mostly third regiment that would come in and load the helicopters and then go to the missions. Once again, it's not an upsec about that. It's commonly known information. It's just one of the key airfields. It was bombarded by the Russians at the beginning. I can tell you a couple of stories about this from my friends who I served with, because they were pulled into their field. But they're not happy stories like people want to hear, but it happened. But we will get to that later. So I hope language learners here. Can you hear us?
Yeah, loud and clear. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. No, this is fantastic. Honestly, it's great, and I'm on terrible internet connection usually, and still am. So it's great to see Andrew's map refreshing immediately.
Yeah.
The joys of a gigabit connection, I suppose.
Yeah. And I
oh,
just want to state, we were talking just before we move on from Kharkiv. There were 2 power plants taken out, and also this really important substation. I just wanted to mention that real fast before we move on. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking the time, and yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, how are you doing, language?
getting used to Discord chat, but I'm doing well. How are you guys doing this evening?
All good.
Awesome.
I'm excited. We've been planning to make this stream for like 5 months, and it's finally here.
It's been a while. I mean, for those listening, Andrew had he's a bit ahead of the curve with a lot of things, like making, frankly, the best map of Ukraine. Not to kiss his ass too much, but I also don't know what the rules are on Discord, so I'll try and control my language. I don't know how that works at all. But
I don't care.
several months ago, he had talked about, hey, trying to do these jury-rigged maps on Twitter is kind of a pain. Why don't we try it on Twitch? And at the time I said, no, Twitch is for the kids, and they need to get off my lawn. I don't understand it at all. And now here we are, because Twitter is, to put it mildly, in a state of flux. So, and then Constantine is absolutely phenomenal. You're not going to find a better source of information from stuff on the ground than these 2 gentlemen right here. So I encourage you to listen to them when they talk and follow along with them when they speak, because it's tremendous amounts of information that you will get nowhere else. I admittedly have been incredibly busy the past couple days, so I've been less active than I should have been. But I do have a general sort of summary region by region. And while I've got 2 experts here with me, it might be interesting if we sort of start in Belarus, proceed clockwise, and then after I hit on some of the more general points for a given region, they can dive into the specifics that I miss. Is that something you guys might want to do tonight?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Let me so I'm gonna just focus on the text and try and let I think Andrew can run his map much better than I can. So starting in Belarus, and this is going to be broadly for the last several days, specifically between the 13th of December and the 16th of December 2022, day 293 through 296 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In Belarus, while there's currently no indication of Russian forces forming assault groups in Belarus or having the present capability to mount another assault into northwest Ukraine, concerns continue to be raised about Russian and Belarusian groupings of troops who are attempting another assault or attempting grouping exercises, which could serve as a pretext for an assault in the coming winter months. Not necessarily imminently, but both the Ukrainian defense minister and the commander-in-chief Zaluzhny have said that Russia is trying to train up about 150,000 of the 300,000 recently mobilized forces in order to potentially launch another offensive towards Kyiv come February, explicitly stating that Russia still has designs on the Ukrainian capital. Now, we'll get to it in a second, but there was a massive missile salvo across Ukraine today. And while the Russian A-50U mainstay AWACS, which is a long-range radar airplane, of which Russia has about 10, and was notable in its presence here in Belarus, was aloft during the missile salvo today, there were no reported missile launches from Belarusian territory. Is this an issue on my end, or is the stream lagging out?
I have no issue.
Okay, probably just an issue on my end. Moving towards Kyiv and western Ukraine.
Language.
Sorry.
It's probably that your the Twitch and Discord has when you talk about Discord, in Discord there is a small pause, so it seems like you're talking. There is a lag, but there is not. So just keep going, and I think it's all good.
Awesome. The map itself, I'm getting a little spinning circle of death, but I think that's an issue on my end, more so than anything else. So, moving towards Kyiv in western Ukraine, there was another massive Russian missile salvo launched on Friday the 16th across Ukraine, with some 74 cruise missiles launched, of which 60 were intercepted for a rate of about 81%. These missiles were broadly targeting Ukraine energy and civilian infrastructure across the country, and is the 9th such large-scale Russian missile wave. The bulk of these cruise missiles were launched by Russian strategic bombers over the Saratov region of Russia, the Caspian Sea, and over the Sea of Azov, as well as cruise missiles that were launched from the Black Sea Fleet out of the Black Sea. As a result, 9 power plants were damaged.
Can we stop here for a second? I'm sorry for
Sure.
this. Is probably
Sure,
not. Andrew, can you show because when I listen and you say this was launched from there and there, there is no real understanding because it goes really fast. Andrew, can you show on the map? And I think you have capability to draw actually.
I can draw. One sec.
And to show the approximate, and by the approximate I mean like 200 by 200 miles squares that would indicate where those things were launched from.
Yeah, I can make a square. I was going to make a nice little arrow, but...
And these are from some distance. I want to say the most notable one that kind of surprised me was things being launched from over the Sea of Azov by Russian bombers, although that has happened before.
Yeah, and keep in mind that this is for us absolutely the first time doing this. There is absolutely we expect the failure, and this is one of the boxes where they're launched from.
Yeah, it's roughly there.
Yep. So those are the locations. Hopefully, it helps, and people have actual understanding where it's being launched from. It's important because usually I hear and people don't have understanding, and it's important to understand. And thank you for drawing them. And please, language, continue. And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, nothing to apologize for at all. Please, this is my first time doing this, so by all means, cut me off early and often, especially if I'm just running through stuff. And if you guys have things to add, by all means, just say hey, and I'm happy to shut up. So, unfortunately, as a result of this large missile strike, some 9 power plants at least were damaged, along with power substations, which did interrupt power generation from Ukraine's nuclear power plants as well. Per Ukrenegro, which is the Ukrainian national power company, about 50% of Ukrainian power infrastructure was taken offline, although power is being broadly restored now in some locales. While there was a state of emergency imposed due to the massive power failures, it has now been lifted, moving back to more general blackouts on schedule where possible. Specifically regarding Kyiv as the capital itself, if we can zoom in there, of the 40 missiles that were allegedly targeting the capital, 37 of them were successfully intercepted, which is one of the largest salvos specifically directed at the capital since the war began. Unfortunately, power was broadly taken offline, along with water and heating to the majority of Kyiv residents, with the metro itself suspending operations. A large group of buses are being temporarily deployed to make up for the suspension of rail service, although the expectation is that this will be a temporary suspension rather than a long-term thing.
Before we move
Thankfully,
on,
per the Kyiv mayor,
um,
yep,
I just want to say that I don't actually know where this substation is, but the substation in this city here, this was the main substation that Russia attacked today because it like all the power that goes to Kyiv from the west has to go through this substation. So taking out that substation stops them from being able to route power from other cities to Kyiv. So that
So
was a major problem.
let me just drop in. Ukraine has a distributed, pretty advanced energy grid, and this is just one of them, and this is one of the biggest ones when you talk about the substations. If it was the only one, you would have it bombarded,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
things would be over.
it's not the only. Like I don't mean to say it's the only one, but it's the major one, and it connects like a few major
Yeah,
power
it
plants.
is the key one. That's the key, and Ukraine tries to protect. We try to protect it as much as we can, of course, but it's not that easy as people think.
Okay.
uh, thankfully, per the Kyiv mayor, some 40% of residents have had their power and water restored, with the goal to broadly restore non-emergency power restrictions by tomorrow. Well, it's important to note this doesn't mean that everybody's going to have the lights on and they can take as long hot showers as they want and run 20 blenders at the same time, but that moving back towards a more scheduled series of power outages rather than the power's out and we don't know when it's coming back. We're working on it. Small victories, but they matter. So it is a testament, though, that the Ukrainian government has been able to find ways to not only keep from having a massive power failure in the event of these large Russian missile strikes, but also to broadly get some semblance of order up and running after, frankly, massive damage to their electrical infrastructure, which has only been compounded by the now ninth of these missile strikes. Is there any other sort of like politics or local events from Kyiv or sort of the western regions of Ukraine that I might have missed on?
I don't think so. I heard that all three of these power plants got damaged to some extent, but I don't know the full extent of each one. Um, so that's all I got.
I want to say there was at least 3 explosions in the capital, and I think the Ukraine government is claiming that only 3 missiles actually hit.
Yeah.
I certainly don't know if there are any Iranian provided loitering munitions, shahids involved in these strikes. I haven't seen anything about that. But uh,
It was
thankfully, I think I don't see any reports of deaths in Kiev. Unfortunately, there were some injuries, but frankly, given the size of the city and the population there, some people wounded and in stable condition is a lot better than others might have expected, given 3 cruise missiles flying smack dab into it. Shall we move over to the Sumi, Chernihiv, and Kharkiv regions?
Yep.
So, broadly, along the border of the Sumi and Chernihiv regions, Russia continues to shell across the border in the last few days. In Sumi, they continue essentially using the villages as target practice, shelling some 80 times in the last 24 hours, which in and of itself is unfortunately not notable because this happens often. What is notable is that there were reports of Russian drones dropping explosives on targets. As best I can tell, this isn't some sort of modern, Russian version of a Predator knockoff or any other combat drone, but the same sort of drone videos you see with a consumer grade drone dropping grenades. I don't know what they were targeting. Haven't seen any indications that there were necessarily large civilian casualties, but it is a worrying sentiment that they're quite literally just using these villages as target practice in a lot of cases. Um, I may have missed it. Andrew, had you noticed if there had been any cross-border fires from Ukraine onto Russian positions in Russia in this region? Because we've seen that happen a couple of times with much Russian complaining when it does.
Yeah, that's way too thick. Mickey. Um, Ukraine is shooting like here, like those two sorts of areas. Um, and Russia is shooting. Oh, wrong screen. Uh, oops. Russia's shooting like there. Like that's kind of where most of the shooting is, and then there's some like over here. I hope that makes sense. But those are
Yeah, no, it
most of the.
really helps to illuminate. But it's important for those listening here that while Ukraine was able to push Russian forces out of this region, in the early parts of the war, Russian forces on the far side of the border have continued to sit there. While it doesn't seem like they're forming assault groups currently with the intention of pushing back across the border, I think the last time I saw anything even resembling a raid was several weeks ago, if not several months ago. They do basically just shell. And when I say target practice, I don't just mean as a figure of speech. They had many months ago actually tasked some of the less experienced Russian combat aircraft pilots into bombing missions here, firing from the Russian side of the border before they sent them into the thick of things. So it's a challenging situation. Thankfully, though, while electric supply was damaged here as well, it was broadly restored to its normal sort of scheduled outages later on in the day. Emergency blackouts are already starting to be reduced. Shall we move over to the Kharkiv area around the city, or is there anything else on the Sumi and Chernihiv regions?
No, I don't have much from here. There's lots of reports of drone attacks, like you said. Um, the last major attack that I know of, um, was around here. This is why I have it marked. I never marked the date. I should have marked the date, but it would have been helpful. But uh, this is the last place I know that they attacked in the Sumi, and that was a while ago. Like that was before the Kharkiv offensive. So
Oh wow! So yeah, some time.
yeah, that was a while ago.
So by attacked, you mean like attacked or just shelled on,
I
you
it
before
was
any attack?
it was a
Go
ground
ahead.
attack. They like pushed up this highway and assaulted it, and I think they kind of controlled this area for like a month, and they just kind of went away. And that was
So,
like September probably,
so
or August maybe.
right now that's the last time it happened, right?
That I know of. Yeah, that was the last like a
Okay.
ground assault that I know
It's
of.
some time ago.
But how many do you think the shellings happen in the Sumy region?
The shellings,
Uh, yeah.
I've heard between 100 and 500 shells a day.
So, like 100 shellings, do you think those shellings are just what we call тревожный огонь, which means like disturbing fire? Just to keep everyone in place and disturb and keep everyone nervous, or do you think that can be there are actually forces on the other side that are can theoretically perform some advancements, advancement movements?
I think it's just harassing fire. Like they shoot here a lot, in Serenia and Buda, and they shoot.
I
Uh,
don't think there's been any assault groups formed.
mm, no, I don't. I don't think there's been ground attacks. There may have been like recon stuff, but I don't really count that.
No, so yeah, that's fine. My question mostly like, do you have
Right.
do you think there is a chance of something like that may happen, and
Not right
or
now.
that's
And I think almost
that
all the shells are mortars. A few like they like I think occasionally they shoot like a grad or something, but it's almost all mortars. Um, and
you got it? Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's continue. Let's not stall on this because we have a lot to cover.
Yeah. And you move over to the Kharkiv region or border right north of it. Um, so sort of his background, I think Andrew can talk more on this than I can. Unfortunately, you might notice that the Russian border is rather close to Kharkiv city, and this allows the Russians to not only fire, before artillery and rocket artillery, but also S-300 missiles, an air defense missile that they have considerable quantities of, which can be repurposed into a sort of ground attack configuration. When that happens, they're essentially, I'm not going to say they're impossible to intercept, but functionally impossible to intercept by most Ukrainian air defenses right now. And they fire these into Kharkiv with alarming frequency. They did fire some 10 into downtown Kharkiv today, which critically damaged electrical infrastructure and suspended metro operations here as well. Now, per the local government, overnight, reportedly some 85% of the city had, quote, light restored. I don't know if they're saying that power's been restored, or if they mean just, the bare minimum. Again, when we say power's being restored here, they usually doesn't mean everything's hunky dory. Run your microwave along with your washing machine and your TV at the same time. Everybody, go ahead. It more so means that they can move back to scheduled power outages rather than unscheduled blackouts, which is again, it's a benefit. It's not ideal, but it's far better than the alternative. Do you guys want to talk a bit on Kharkiv?
um, well, I have a few things. They Ukraine shot down 2 cruise missiles, so that's cool. Um, I know that these four confirmed hits. Down here, I don't even remember what this was. It was, I guess they just shot a building. I don't remember. But they hit the power plant. They hit this electrical substation, which is very important. I think hitting this substation is what knocked out power for most of the city. And then I think this was another substation. Um, so the S-300s are ballistic missiles. They're practically impossible to shoot down. When you can shoot them when they're going up into the air, but you can't really shoot them down when they're coming down out of the air.
You can, but it's gonna be more expensive than the missile. It's gonna be more expensive than the target that it hits, because the technology to do this is really important. But we have a question from one of the people in the chat, um, and it sounds like how much did this ballistic missile and drone attack? It was a mixed attack. Cost to Russia. Do you have any understanding? What are your takes on this?
I want to say the last time that Russia fired about 100 of these, mostly being cruise missiles. Again, similar to what we saw today. I think the estimate was somewhere between 400 and 500 million US dollars. Frankly, maybe it was a little bit less today. I would be surprised if it was less than 400. I'd say probably somewhere between 350 and 450. 350 to 450 million dollars, which is a considerable portion. I mean, that's the Russian economy is not doing great. They are certainly not producing these missiles at the rate that they're firing them. So while it's a terrible thing, the silver lining is every time they fire one, that's one less that they have. And so, there is an end in sight. What time that comes around, I certainly can't suspect. And the S-300s are going to remain a problem for a while. But these are, I'm not going to say they're desperation attacks, but they're desperation attacks. Russia is recognizing that Ukraine's air defenses are much more capable. This likely didn't start as, oh, we can afford to lose, 100 missiles to get 10 on target. The idea being that if any of these missile strikes have been 100% successful. Frankly, if 100 missiles slammed into Ukraine power infrastructure, the power grid would be down, and who knows when it would be coming back. That seems to be the Russian plan. Thus far, it's been decidedly unsuccessful, although it's still a challenge.
And just a
Hopefully that
note,
answers.
just a note on the S-300s. They have if they launched the level of attack that they launched today, they could only do that about 150 times before they ran out of S-300s. And just keep in mind, because the S-300s this is not their purpose. These are anti-aircraft missiles. So if you burn through all of them doing this, it would be pretty stupid. But they don't have an infinite amount. Um, they can do these sorts of attacks for maybe another 6 months, and then they're done.
So there is a question from a listener and subscriber. Do you think that it's possible to strike back those batteries that are attacking Ukraine? Specifically, I think he's talking about S-300s because they are much shorter range systems than X-555s or any other missile systems that are striking Ukraine at the moment. So, what is your take on that?
They hit them whenever they can, especially in the south where it's easier, like around in the Zaporizhzhia area. That I can show you on the map, really. Where am I? Like around here, in this big circle, is where Russia launches a lot of S-300s. Draw a circle.
So let's while you're here, where can you draw where the missile from this from here hit? Can you just draw the arrow? Just zoom out and draw the arrow where you think. I think I see it in Zaporizhzhia, but can you just do this for such stupid people as me?
They're hitting like there.
So you draw there, yeah, thank you. There goes a bit further right because you showed the Kamishwaha, and yeah, that's. Can you zoom out a bit? Because we don't see.
If I zoom out, it's not going to change the arrows. Anyway.
Oh,
shoot.
We gotta learn.
Yeah.
We gotta learn. That's fine. Oh, and everything is green right now.
Yeah, it's the green screen. It's fine. Everything's green. It's great.
Oh. It's blue screen. That's fine. The blue screen of death, not the green screen of death. We're not used to that.
But yeah, they shoot. Where am I? They shoot here. They shoot like all over there, and they shoot like this whole area. It's like this whole box. They shoot everything in this box with S-300s all the time. They shoot more S-300s than people give credit for. Because I talk to people who live in Zaporizhzhia every day, and they say like last night they shot like 6, or tonight they shot 14 or something. Like they shoot so many.
So would you say that it's true that S-300s are used more than other regions, or you just have the information about Zaporizhzhia?
I think they shoot them more here. Well, I definitely have more information from here, but I think they shoot them more here in general. Also, this area, like this little circle, that has a lot of electrical substations. That's why they shoot there. But yeah, and they also shoot at Nikopol, and they shoot over here. A lot of S-300s. So it just because S-300 has a range of about 120 kilometers, So they're just shooting anything within that range, basically. And they tend to shoot them from around in like the Chernihiivka, and then like somewhere around here in Kherson. And then they also hit Kharkiv a lot, and they also hit Kupyansk a lot with S-300s, like every other day.
Okay, so let's continue ahead. I'm sorry for we distracted language a bit.
Oh,
And
No,
please.
it's good.
oh,
It's
and
all
one
good.
last thing.
No worries, no.
Tonight there was an explosion in Belgrade, and I have no idea what the explosion was or where it was, but I just marked an explosion because there's a video of just a gigantic explosion.
There was actually so the allegations I'm seeing is that a Russian missile had some sort of malfunction. This may have also happened in another region in Russia. This has happened before, where because these S-300 missiles, they have a stockpile. I want to say before the war it was like 8,000. Some of them have been better maintained than others. There's been a couple videos of them taking off from Belgrade and just blowing up in the sky. And I think a couple times where they've blown up and pieces have actually hit residential apartment buildings. At which point Russia, throws a tantrum and says it was all the Ukrainian missiles or what have you. But it's certainly not the first time that there's been reports of Russian missiles malfunction. And I would not be surprised if we see that become more and more of an issue as they increasingly reach back into their stockpiles. And again, they're using air defense missiles and a ground attack capability. It's like you can use your really expensive power drill to hit a nail and drive it into a board, but that's probably not the most effective use of it. That's kind of what we're seeing now. They work, they do the job, but you're trying to do something that they're not intentionally from the start designed for. So as a result, there's going to be a squirrely activity now and again. Like I don't think their accuracy is super fantastic, frankly. Maybe Andrew can correct me on that.
Their accuracy's not that great, but it's not that bad either. It's frustratingly accurate.
Right.
And there's a question. Does the use of S-300 for ground attack mean that the Russians don't think that Ukraine will get modern jets? And I don't think so. I don't, because they're using their older S-300s for the ground attack, and then there's like the newer S-300s that would, I guess, be better at attacking aircraft. And I don't think they're using those in the ground attack role.
It's older stuff, I think. And Russia is terrified of the prospect of Ukraine receiving more modern combat aircraft. There's been talks from NATO allies sending over more modern stuff, Soviet-style things that Ukraine currently has training on, as well as rumors and reports of sending over more modern NATO aircraft. That, however, is going to take some time. So Russia is, as we can see from them, literally pulling people out of homeless shelters in Moscow to go fight and die around Bakhmut, indicates that they're not exactly playing the long game right now. And that goes as far as this to be, oh, we have something that Ukraine can't defend as well against. Let's just use it. I don't think they're necessarily making large scale plans at this point. But we can move over towards the Kupyansk area.
Yeah.
So around Kupyansk, starting from the north specifically, uh, Russian forces appear to be somewhat on the assault towards Ukrainian positions north of Kupyansk across the river near the Vochna, with the exact situation here remaining broadly unclear, as Russian artillery has increasingly targeted the west bank of the Oskil. For several months since the Kharkiv offensive, Ukrainian troops and Russian troops have been broadly in the same locations here. There's been intermittent shelling, but it does seem as though Russian forces have made some gains in at least the last week or so. This area is a bit of a question mark to me. Constantine, Andrew, maybe you guys know a little bit more about it because it seems fairly stagnant here.
There was some news today from the general staff, that Vilshana got shelled by the Russians, and I don't think that would means that Ukraine is in the town, but I think they're getting closer to the town, so they might be kind of moving just kind of north maybe. And there's also shelling in this general area, especially in Ivanivka. So it's possible that Ukraine kind of controls. I can try. Uh, like they may have moved up, sort of like that. Um, I'm not sure.
So
I
what we
haven't
have
updated the
seen
map.
is maybe the Ukrainian forces, yeah, are pushing up sort of from the south here. But I think this area has been broadly stagnant while we've seen a lot of other movement in other areas of the front, which seems to indicate it's not as high priority at the very least. It is important to note that from this area, the Russian border is generally speaking not that far away. So I'm going to hypothesize for a second. If we see something here, it's probably not going to be Ukrainian forces sprinting deep to the east, but more so pushing up and clearing stuff to the Russian border. However, as we've already seen in areas like Kharkiv, Sumi and Chernihiv, if you get to the border, the Russians will go onto their side of the border and keep shooting at you. And while there has been, successful attempts to destroy these Russian positions in Russia proper, it's more challenging in some regards than it is hitting Russian positions in Ukraine for a variety of reasons. Unfortunately, some of them political with the use of certain weapon systems. But ultimately, the takeaway is you push the Russians all the way to border. It's great; they're out of Ukraine, but they're still going to be shooting at you. So, sometimes the idea that I can take this terrain, but now we have to sit on the border and get shot at, may not be the highest priority at one
So,
specific moment in time when there's other
so
use like Svatove.
sorry to interrupt you guys. If you have that's a nice sliding trench line. I like how it looks right now, much better than it was before when you moved the positions. But would it be possible if you can pull up the Google Earth
Yeah, I can do that.
and we can see the actual elevation differences and understand the forest the instead of looking at the map like this we can see actual stuff and while you do this I have to drop for a minute. I have to have a bio pause.
Okay.
I'll be back. I hope you find it by that moment and maybe it gives you some interest and gives more understanding why things are happening like this. Yeah, I'm gonna be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. So it's a lot of low ground. I think that's what he wanted us to see. There's a lot of low ground. Wow.
Do you have terrain relief magnified on yours? When I do
I do.
Google
I do.
Earth,
I
I kick it up to 3 times. So
I can
yeah,
I
it
can
just
use
makes
it
it
not
really easy
do
to
that.
see everything.
I have it. I have
No, 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 I
Google
love it.
Earth. I have Google Earth opened in two different tabs, and each has a different magnification.
Huh. But for those watching, this is not just Google Earth regular. You might notice Google Earth Pro. I promise it's not an app for your phone. It's on your PC, and it's just a better, a little more technically sophisticated version of Google Earth. You can even do little things like flight simulators in it. If you really got a lot of time on your hands. But showing the terrain elevation, if you highlight over a specific area with your mouse, it'll actually tell you what the elevation is. Plus, you can physically see it. This war is fought, it's a big difference between fighting across an open field that's flat and fighting uphill into a forest or down into a river valley, and these things matter. So it's if you ever want to really get into the nitty gritty of it, I encourage you to take a look at some of these areas. Like once we get down to Bakhmut, you might notice that this isn't just a flat chessboard here. There are hills and there are valleys, and battle lines tend to align along them. But
Yeah, this low ground looks like it's about 50 feet lower than the high ground, which isn't a tremendous amount, but it's enough.
it's the circumstances do change. I mean, if you're going to attack uphill, it's going to suck. 50 feet, 100 feet, I'm usually like, okay, maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. There are areas where you've got 200 or 300 feet of elevation change, which, sure, doesn't sound like that much, but that's going up a 20 or 30-story building against people who are shooting at you. And that can usually be less than ideal, to put it mildly. So I think we'll see not so much in the east here where it's a little bit more flat plains, but in some areas in the Donbas, you really do run into these more significant terrain features. But I guess
I'm back. Thank you for having me.
That was quick, man. Good to have you back. We were just sort of
Yeah, and I
and
managed to have a fight with my wife, so it's like it's double quick. I'm just joking. We had. So this is what I wanted to show. This is why there is no Ukrainian or Russian advancements. It's a huge area where you just to cross it, you have to go down, not only up. That's the key here. You have to go down before that. It's like we call it ovrak. I don't know. I think you call it ravine or I don't know. Sorry. Where someone to advance, he has to go up, and then he has to go down. So defending positions like that is really easy. And if you even have, I don't know, you have to have nukes or something to take it. It's really complex. And of course, Russia does not possess these capabilities because they're struggling to hold their. They were struggling to hold their positions during October and September offensives. And right now, maybe they're considering something to do war there, but it's absolutely new battlefield that was not yet discussed. But it should be, of course, as I'm sure Ukrainian general staff is looking at it and keeping this in mind. There is a commander that has a responsibility of doing that, but that's why it was not forced. That's why Ukraine does not have this, did not liberate this territory because it was just too dangerous, and there were other priorities to push up to Svatove. And there probably are defensive positions over there.
Speaking of Svatove, because this is along the highway from Kupyansk to Svatove, and while in this broadly yellow shaded area, like Konstantin just said, doesn't really make a lot of sense to run it down into ravines and valleys and then across fields under Russian artillery fire when your next big gain would be more fields and more artillery fire. So there's certain Russian positions past there, but right now it seems that the focus is on Svatove itself. However, Russian forces had a number of strong points along this highway several months ago. Broadly speaking, most of them have been liberated. Right now, Russian and Ukrainian forces were skirmishing around Orleansk with artillery, place we were just talking about, as well as the former Russian strongpoint of Kyslyvka, with Russian forces shelling here, working to try and keep Ukrainian troops from advancing across the field and liberating more villages. That being said, further south along the highway, where we're seeing the most fighting, is Russian forces around Kuzymivka, a Russian strongpoint near the highway, towards the contested area of Novoselivske immediately next to it, which has seen the sites of very heavy fighting. I believe Konstantin and Andrew had been talking about this earlier and are probably a little better informed on it than I am. But this area here has seen the sites of some very heavy fighting, really just along the road, as I understand it. Ukrainian forces had pushed close to the road. They've now been pushed back somewhat. But we're talking about very heavy pitched artillery over an area that's measured in, what, a couple blocks? Is that right?
It's about 3/4 of a kilometer this way and 1 kilometer in the other way. So it's not even 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer.
And just massive amounts of artillery.
But what's important here,
point,
this is the key to the valley. This is one of the key. points where Russia has to, because the elevation difference is so much, it opens up absolutely new area of operations that Russia does not want to Ukraine to have, and they're pushing back really hard.
You see, it gets pretty steep right after this town. It's just all downhill.
What's the difference in elevation from the highway to the center of Kuzmivka?
Let's measure from here. It's 122 meters, and here is, so it's like 60 meters.
Okay, so the better part of 200 feet with some back.
So 60 meters on which distance? Like, what is the ground distance?
About 2
If
kilometers.
you right click, you should be able to.
So it's about 60 meters over 2 kilometers. Although a lot of it is right here. This is.
Well, it seems like it drops down. It appears like it drops down pretty rapidly and then is a little bit more gradual. So,
So like,
I think what we're seeing here is that the good.
This drops like 40 meters and 400 meters.
Got it.
So,
but
yeah,
it seems like, I guess,
this valley is what's important.
Sorry.
And then also today, the general staff said that that Russia shelled this town. So this is like obviously very close by. So I'm not sure exactly what shelling here means, but shows that Ukraine is probably also attacking up here.
And maybe zooming out a little bit and sort of fixating on a north-south axis, we can see I think we can all kind of agree, the whole point of what Ukraine is doing here is to push towards Svatove. And there's a couple ways to get there that, to have people, they could go from the northwest. We'll talk about some attempts from the southwest. These could serve as springboards. Should Ukraine manage to decisively control this highway that leads down towards Svatove, then it really does cause some great concern to the Russian forces, because as you get closer to Svatove, that elevation difference we're talking about becomes even more important, in that you can just sit with mortars or whatever you want on the west side of town and hit anything inside the city itself.
So, and that's where you can help. Just gonna pitch in a commercial. We have a fundraiser that helps troops exactly in this region. And I think you all know my Twitter account. And you can just check it out. We help those troops. We featured the video from here, from this region, a couple of hours ago. And it helps understand what's happening. It helps Ukrainian troops. And if you're interested by any chance, please check it out. Check out the links on my profile on Twitter and donate and help us fight Russian invasion. Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead, Language.
Yeah, it's a great resource. Constantine is he's got a real problem. I don't like it about him. The man's too humble. He's done tremendous work materially with his own expense, and more times than frankly anybody would ever consider reasonable. And for what little my word's worth, the man's a stand-up honest guy, and I can tell you for a fact that when he sends stuff there, it gets where it needs to go. So no concerns there. We can keep moving down the highway though, from Novoselivsk southeast if we'd like. And I think because I am on terrible internet and I'm trying to do Twitch and Discord at the same time, I may have to do that on my phone next time. It's sometimes
I'm gonna come and fix it for you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I think it's more of a, if you find a way to just change all the mountains wherever I am to getting off of DSL then to fiber, well, I think they'll vote you in for city council or something.
I just want to
But
say it because
go ahead, sorry.
there's a question about that Economist article from the other day. I think that article is mostly propaganda. I don't really take what was said in that article. Because there's obviously truth to it, but there was a purpose. The purpose was to raise money and weapons for Ukraine, and you just need to read it, knowing that.
Which article are we talking about specifically? I'm sorry. Which article was this specifically again?
It was the one where the commander was saying like Russia is raising 200,000 men to attack Kyiv, and we need like 500
Right.
artillery pieces, and we need like 300 tanks or whatever he said.
Yeah, he's Zelensky. Yeah, so the article was excited Zelensky saying, "I can win this war. Give me 500 artillery guns. I want to say it was like 300 armored vehicles and 200 tanks, and I can beat this army. But I need more resources." You're absolutely right. There's a certain aspect of this is a threat. Don't get complacent. Send us stuff. However, diving into it a little more deeply, it seems that people did round up considerably. They said, "Hey, Russia has conscripted or mobilized some 300,000 people," and we'll get to it later. But Russia is taking massive casualties. From some third-party sources, volume media, they're estimating the better part of 2,000 casualties a day. Now, this includes lightly wounded. So let's be clear on that. That's not 2,000 people dead. That's 2,000 people who are wounded, everything from lightly to severely, missing in action, captured or killed. And this is with not that many assaults going on right now. We're not seeing a massive Russian offensive the way we did, say, around really anywhere except for Bakhmut, a little bit in Luhansk and Donetsk regions, as well as near Soledar. And these losses are not sustainable. So Russia is burning through its mobilized troops. Diving into the actual interview he had, he said that about 150,000 of these 300,000 troops are still in the process of being trained, allegedly, so that they can be used for a later attack towards Kyiv or other areas in Ukraine come, say, January or February. But beyond that, I think, some people did kind of take it and ran with it, saying Russia has 200,000 troops. They don't really think, well, where did Russia get 200,000 combat-capable troops? Because they don't seem to have them. Oh, these are fresh mobilized soldiers. Still a threat, still a risk, but it's not, 200,000, Russian Navy SEALs waiting at the border to run into downtown Kyiv, which some people have kind of taken that as. But you're absolutely right, Andrew. Moving down, so we were northwest of Svatove. Moving to the southwest of Svatove, Russian forces continue to be shelled in Svatove itself. But southwest of Svatove, Russian troops have made some gains west of the highway, moving across some fields here to Ukraine positions around Kreminna. Hopefully I didn't break that too much, which lies just along the Zerb River, a former Russian defensive line that just kind of fell apart when Ukraine forces flanked them from Liman. And there's a highway here where Ukraine troops have increasingly attempted to consolidate positions. Russia has dedicated really large quantities of artillery to this region in an apparent attempt to blunt any Ukraine offensive towards Svatove from this direction. It's important to note while looking. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, Language, to interrupt you. I'm just gonna ask Andrew to can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna ask Andrew to bring up the Google Earth map with the elevation, because it's like this is people understand this is quite an interesting developments that that has a lot of impact on the terrain. Terrain has a lot of impact on this, and I just wanna show how it looks like. And yeah, this exactly shows what's happening. So Ukraine had we had some for our forces taking the positions inside of the villages that would cut off the highway. and Russians are reinforcing right now them and trying to push our forces back. So the key over here is that I don't know if you can draw, but while you're attacking from the high ground, it seems that it's you have this huge advantage, and it's right. But at the same time, you have really huge problems of falling back. And this what people have to keep in mind. If you attack from the high ground, you have this huge advantage. But if you in something does not go well, falling back is really complex for you because running back on the top of the hill or driving it is really complex. So this is a complex situation where Ukraine have managed. We have managed to take up to the highway. And Russians, they understand that there is this hill that we would be pressed upon against, and they're trying to push it. But once again, this is the hill allows the supplies to come through, and the forces can, they don't just run away because they have supplies from the high ground. And this is quite an interesting development that is not that covered much, but it's one of the four. I don't know how to say this in English, right? But it's one of the key battlegrounds at the moment in Luhansk region. There is not much reported, but it's important, and there is back and forth. And when language is saying like they have been pushed, there is a river flowing down the bed. You can see over here, and it gives additional terrain advantages or disadvantages. And at the same time, if you measure the river, if you measure the width of the river, it's pretty narrow. So if you have an advantage, you can cross it pretty quick. Yeah, so it's less than
it's like 4 meters.
Yeah, so that's like your pool, basically, the width of your pool. But if you think that it's just width of your pool, we should not care about it. No, try to cross the pool when you have a machine gun on the other side. It's an interesting development over here. It's one of the key areas that is underreported. Ukrainian forces managed to cross the river. Managed to take a village, then they were pushed back, then they're put in. It's like back and forth, and getting information from there is quite complex. I think Andrew can fill in on this, and I'm gonna go mute and let Andrew talk here.
I just want to say this is about an 80-meter drop from the hill to the river, and I don't really have anything else to say about this, other than it seems that recently, like this week, Russia pushed through, and they claimed a lot of this, what was kind of a gray area, but yeah, I think they pushed up to the highway, which is why I have it marked this way, and the same with a few of these towns further. I had this all marked as kind of a gray area, but it's now all under Russian control at the moment. So, and this is Ukraine has the same problem here in assaulting because they have to fight downhill to hit the Russians.
So my question is like getting the information, on these specific areas is really complex, right? I'm not. I would rather hear from you, but I think that's my take on it. That getting information from the specific areas, where you have the downhill, and you have some shellings over there, shellings over here. Yeah, what would you say?
Yeah, then there's been back and forth here as well, where Russia attacked Avdiivka and then Ukraine counterattacked, and it's gone back and forth. Like this whole area is another gray area, which is why I have it marked that way.
Great. So let's thank you. I'm sorry for pausing, but yeah, we can. I think we can go. We showed like was as I take it. It was pretty cool that we highlighted the this elevation difference. Identified why the line is like that because there is an elevation, and I think we can go further. And
Sure.
yeah.
Then the next are kind of all together. So Plashanka, Chervona Popivka, and Zlivka, which are all really close, much closer to Kreminna. Again, this is sort of the southern way that Ukrainian forces can gain access to the highway and then push up to Svatove. Their Ukrainian troops at this point broadly have artillery control over the P66 highway. They do not physically have control over the highway, although there are Ukrainian special forces on both sides. That's a big difference from some recon units versus having tanks sitting on the highway, right? It's something that there's been heavy artillery strikes here on, especially around Plashanka, where Ukrainian forces seem to be, from the way I understand it, relatively close to the town. Plashanka was an area that Russian troops were basing out of and using that to stage further assaults to the west. But since then, that seems to have dropped off considerably, and it's mostly artillery barrages in this area. Otherwise, near Kreminna, we are seeing Russian and Ukrainian forces skirmishing in the woods themselves. But, again, we're not necessarily seeing major, you know, gains and losses here. It's Russian forces using the Russian playbook of if we fire enough artillery at them, they can't move forward. Because if they do move forward and they take the highway, then they can essentially run up the highway. And now Svatove is in much more serious danger than it is right now. And it's in considerable danger right now. I think that kind of wraps up this region in general, unless there's stuff you guys want to add. Then we can run down through Siversk and to Bakhmut.
Yep. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about here, other than Plashanka. I'm not really sure what's going on here. I think it's all gray area. Chernopopivka, um, it's kind of weird. A lot of people think Ukraine has captured it already, and I don't think they have. And in Dubrova, Ukraine is saying that they're within 1.5 kilometers, which I don't think is actually true. I know that Ukraine is heavily bombing this town with helicopters, and in Kreminna, it's the roads are just torn apart by artillery. Like there aren't roads anymore, and people are upset about that. I know that Ukraine has been pushing some recon units kind of this way, to like the southeast of Kreminna, to varying degrees of success. And Russia is trying to push Ukraine out of this forested area, but they have not been able to. Okay, so
Let's just kind of kick down to Siversk real quick, the area between Siversk and Lysychansk. Broadly speaking, the situation here has not changed significantly in the past couple days. Changed a little bit in one direction and then a little bit in the other. So to the east of Siversk, you basically have three axes that Russian forces are trying to attack to. The northeast, around Bilharivka, the east, which is closer to Verkno-Kamyanka, and the southeast, which is around a town called Spern. Russian forces along the highway really haven't materially moved in several months now. Russian forces around Spern got pushed back a little bit, seem to have taken, a couple kilometers back of territory in a counteroffensive in recent days. And then to the northeast, near Bilharivka, Russian forces had attempted an assault towards the town itself, And it appears that now Ukrainian forces have actually been able to break out a little bit more to the southeast. So, it's
I'm
important.
actually
Go ahead, sir.
I don't think Ukraine was ever left this southeast area. I think because I know they were there at one point, and then people were just kind of like they're not there anymore, and then oh they're there again. I don't think they ever left. I think they're there the whole time. But certainly
That's good to know.
Bilohorivka, this town doesn't exist anymore. It's just kind of like a big crater. But if Ukraine can ever actually push Russia out of here, it will severely weaken Kreminna. That's why Russia is
Because they
attacking
can
here
run
in the first
along the
place.
river.
Yeah, they could
Yeah, the
push up.
Russians have committed forces here a little bit, and there's a river that runs just along here, the Siversk and Donetsk. Should Ukraine forces be able to push up along this river, even on the east side where they are now, that places them very uncomfortably close to Kreminna for any Russians there. And then there's further downstream effects on cities like Rubizhne and Lysychansk, which do get shelled occasionally, but frankly, we're not quite there yet. To um, but that's about what we're seeing around Siversk. The situation remains broadly unchanged. So I guess we can move down to the most active section of the front right now, which is around Bakhmut, and starting in Soledar.
One thing I want to
Um,
say is that this forested area that's between the other Bilohorivka and Berestove, this forested area is really important because it's kind of Ukraine's only real stronghold in this area, and Russia is trying really hard to push them out, but they can't because it's, as you see, it's this uphill forest. And keep in mind that this elevation is exaggerated, but it is an uphill forest. So
which is not a fun place to fight through.
yeah, and in Yakovlivka, the Russians have taken like this part today of Yakovlivka. For sure, they may have taken more, but that is confirmed. You can see it.
So let's move down to. Oh, sorry.
I marked it on my map right here.
There we go. Shall we kick on down to Soledar?
Yep.
So, so we could talk quite a bit about everything going on in the Soledar region. It's pretty massive, in a lot of ways. There has been some Russian advances. Frankly, it seems like they've been able to push out and control more area either in or immediately around the large salt mine in the east of the town. Just based on where we're seeing Ukrainian artillery strike, which is increasingly on both sides, as well as along the western, sort of more suburb region of Soledar, to the highway itself. At this point, still doesn't seem like Russia's they're breaking through, they're going to take Soledar anytime soon, but it does demonstrate that at least control around the salt mine itself has at least somewhat changed hands. Well, I mean, there's a lot to add here, Andrew. Constantine?
Yeah, this little kind of residential square, I think Russia is probably going to take this whole residential area within the next few days. And this is the high ground, which isn't ideal. Ukraine is probably going to have to counterattack at some point, and they haven't yet. So yeah, that's the issue around Soledar right now.
Yeah. And we're talking about the suburbs here, because Soledar is a pretty wide city. So you have this large salt mine, a lot of stuff around there.
Yeah.
You
I think
have
this is a
rural
gypsum
suburb.
mine, I think.
Oh, is that the gypsum mine? Is the
Yeah,
salt mine further to the west?
the salt mine is like over here. Where it says, yeah, over here.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
that's the gypsum mine. They make drywall. That's why they have like 5 drywall factories here, including this one right here. This North Gips is a drywall factory.
Which is where the Russian forces have been broadly basing out of.
Yeah.
I have to imagine there's not a ton left. So we've seen this. It's something to keep an eye on. South of Soledar and Bakhmutsky, Russian forces have, for some time now, been attempting to push down the highway itself into, north of Bakhmut. There's other operations there that have gotten the Russians closer. This doesn't seem to be the main one because Russian forces come under Ukrainian artillery fire. What is notable, though, is that the Ukrainians report that some 10 Russian soldiers were captured in this area. And there's some speculation that they had tried to desert from Wagner and had, ran out, or they just got captured. Either way is something to keep an eye on. But moving down the highway itself towards north of Bakhmut proper, Russian forces have continued to skirmish around the crossroads and the gas station, which is, I'm sure we've all seen the video now, as they are apparently attempting assaults towards the northern suburb of Pidhorodny. This suburb of Bakhmut city would allow for Russian troops to entrench themselves somewhat should they successfully take it, rather than their current positions, which are fighting out of a large series of open fields, doesn't provide a ton of cover. Russia is apparently attempting to set conditions to either flank Bakhmut from the north along this highway or to open up new lines of assault directly into the city itself. At this point, doesn't seem like there's been, substantive Russian gains that they can hold on to. While they have made gains across these fields, it is one thing to hold position in fields and trenches, it is another thing to get into a city and then have to be dislodged. And should Russian forces get into Pidhorodny in force, then I would start to be increasingly concerned. At this point, it's a challenging situation, but frankly, there's more challenging situations around Bakhmut.
I actually have good news about this area from today. Yesterday, I think the Russians kind of moved up to this kind of like tree line here, like 2 days ago. Yesterday, Ukraine counterattacked and pushed them back to like, I think this kind of tree line, like around here. And today, Ukraine counterattacked again and pushed them basically back to the gas station. So
Really good.
Russia has been pushed from around here back to here.
That is good. It does sort of highlight that when you're in large open fields, broadly flat terrain, it's not completely flat, there are hills here, but we're not dealing with massive hills and valleys, that it's challenging to hold on to that because we've all seen, I'm sure at this point, the photos and some videos of the Ukrainian trenches, which are in challenging shape. The Russian trenches, I promise you, are not much better. They're far worse. And with the weather conditions there, it's cold, it's wet, it's cold. The things are, trees are gone. It's cold. People don't want to stick around and fight, especially when they're forcibly mobilized conscripts. So, something to focus on, but it's good to see that they're getting put.
I just want to say that this is absolutely amazing that we're like sharing live map, and it's just shows this incredible and gives you understanding that's why things are happening. And it's absolutely great. Thank you, and let's continue because we're, I think we're 1 hour in, and we have did not cover as much as we wanted. So please go on. Sorry for interrupting.
Sure. Yeah, I know we're this is first time I'm doing it. I know you guys got a chance to do it before, and so I'm sorry if I'm sort of dragging everything down here, but this is the T thing. This is the learning experience, right? Around Bakhmut city, though, and we'll just maybe kind of hit these a little more briefly. To the east of Bakhmut city, along the main highway, some long-held Ukraine defensive strongpoints have been withdrawn from along Patricia Lumumbi Street from a furniture and ceramic factory that were long fortified. Ukrainian troops continue to hold fortified positions in a winery and massive concrete factory, which both lie immediately to the east of the main river crossing leading into Bakhmut. It remains to be seen if Russian forces can muster enough troops to push the Ukrainian defenders out and cross the river here, although Ukraine shelling has pulled back as far as the concrete factory outskirts, indicating that assaults are still continuing. As part of this Russian assault, there has been an incursion into the Bakhmut residential neighborhoods southwest of these major Ukraine defensive strongpoints, with heavy Ukraine shelling over essentially 2 blocks of territory. This is significant in that it is the first Russian offensive to successfully take any territory in the Bakhmut residential area in, frankly, some time. It might have happened briefly before that I missed.
No.
And as such is likely to attract additional resources and manpower from both the Russian and Ukrainian side.
Yeah, and it's important to note that this is a hill. Like you see these buildings on the side of this hill here. These are all like 5-story buildings, and all of this residential area is all 1 and 2-story structures. So you have these big tall buildings on the side of a hill that Russia is going to have to assault at some point, and that is I would not want to assault this, but they attacked successfully, took some of this ground. Um, they moved in probably in this area here. Um, they've been kicked out of this from what I can tell. Ukraine is counterattacking and pushing them out. It just takes a lot of time to push them out. There's just so many structures and so many places to hide and everything. So I I think in the next few days Russia will be kicked out of here. It's just a time-consuming process.
And it also does show that even though they've been able to broadly level and push out Ukraine troops from these long-held defensive positions in this industrial area along the main highway, that's not something that's come easy. It's been months and months of shelling and now heavy losses in order to do so. And so they're actively looking for other ways because they've cleared about 2 of the 4 major industrial defensive points, trying to clear the other 2 closer to the river, at which point now you still have to deal with the river and the hill, is something it seems that even Wagner, with their noted lack of care for casualties, is realizing that this is a bad thing. Should we move to the south of Bakhmut, around Ivanrod and Optin?
Yeah, and just to mention the garbage dump. This is the garbage dump. This is a really important
Right.
area, and you see why it's important is because it's the high ground over all these other lower areas down here. So that's why it mattered. And for a long time, this crossroad was a vital crossroad too, because it protected the hill basically. But anyway,
And for people, just so you don't, for people to understand, you can you zoom in back to this hangar on the crossroad?
yeah,
We have this hangar, right?
yeah,
Like for example, to understand the field, the size of this hangar, it's like just measure it. You can drop the how you say this? Yeah, the ruler.
it's 60 meters.
It's 60. Yeah, it's 60 meter hangar. That is, one small hangar that stays over here, and people say, "Oh, let's just bomb everything." And you can, for people to understand that, one 52 millimeter shell would take only 1/5 of that hangar if you land it right. And it's not that easy. We all tend to think that the modern weapons, but yeah, the modern missiles you can strike, you can destroy their hangar, and you can destroy their base. But there are thousands of bases like this, and you don't know which one is the one where it's actually important. But you can actually, expand your entire arsenal of missiles just to strike it. So keep this in mind that striking 3-4 missiles in a hangar like this would cost you $5-10 million. At the same time, there may be nothing in it, and it's as important for Russians as important for absolutely any military, and it's just not something that you can discard. And if you actually, zoom in on the I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah,
If you zoom in, no, go back. go like where you were before.
On the hangar.
There's another hangar over here. No. Like zoom back, zoom back, zoom back, no back. That zoom in, zoom out. Okay, zoom out. Sorry, it's you Americans. I'm sorry, Americans. Zoom out. And yeah, and now move
have
to
no
the
idea what you
right,
want from
to
me.
the right, to
Yeah.
the right.
Okay.
Move to the right.
Moving to the right.
Yeah, and now yeah. Imagine this area. This is that you have in front of you. Those houses, you see those dots, like zoom in over here.
Yeah, these
So
these are all,
this
apartment
is like
buildings.
resident. Yeah, this is a residential areas. And you remember how the barrack look like? Sorry, not the barrack, hangar looked like. And it just it's you have thousands of things like that in Ukraine. It's not like you have two areas. We have this is just give you the comparison. Residential building is about the same size, and you're gonna have, for example, people that get evacuated from that building, and now that's a defensive position. Or alternatively, you can you can hold this as a defensive position. In military terms, it's just insane how much I don't know how to say it, how much terrain features and leverage you can have that that would prevent Russians or anyone, any military. Like, imagine you evacuated everyone from here, and now this is all your, those are your defensive positions. It's insane. It's just like how you can advance over here. And this is what is happening. This is a immensely complex terrain combat that people think is just just drive the tank and shoot and have 20 guys running behind it. It's not like that. If you draw the lines, unfortunately they look flat over here, but those buildings are actually have they would stick out, and they
These are
would
all like
have
5-6 stories, if not taller. Some of them.
those are 9 stories, 9 to 13 stories. This is the one that you're looking at. It's a 9 to 13 stories buildings. It gives you so much vision. It gives you don't even need to shoot. If you know that someone is moving, and if you have your artillery battalion ready to zoom in into the specific place. Just it's not that what people think it is. And let's go. Let's continue because
I
I'm
love
just.
the optimism of the temporarily closed gas station.
It's funny because you see that a lot in the Ukrainian stuff. Everything's temporarily closed. And you get little things saying the real world situation may, reflect these store hours may not be accurate. And there's been some that are a little more comical than others. You really dive into the nitty gritty. I want to say it's around Bakhmut, might be around Zaporizhzhia, but a bunch of Russian soldiers were wounded. Russia has pretty terrible field hospitals, so they got sent to essentially a venereal disease clinic. And briefly, somebody had been like, "Oh, it's active again," but it's not. It's just being used because it's a somewhat medical environment that's better than just letting people sleep in a basement. But
Yep. And
we can
someone asked about
good.
the underground tunnels. I don't feel comfortable talking about the underground tunnels, just because
Yeah, we can move on from that.
this
I think
is
we
just
can
too
just-
important.
Yeah, we can just move on from that.
Yeah, there's some tunnels in the area, and when there's a good time to talk about them, we'll talk about them. But what we can talk about, because it's been publicly disclosed, is that Ukraine does have underground defenses in the city, tunnels they've made in Bakhmut. There's videos from established journalists talking about this. So when we say Bakhmut's a tough city to crack, or at least I make that point, it's not just that, oh, well, I think that the Ukrainians are really good here. Would be sending in freshly mobilized forces that have been dying in open fields with a massive artillery advantage into a city of this size with rivers running through it north-south on numerous locations, and where the Ukraine soldier can be, as Konstantin just said, 9 stories up or a couple stories down, and or just waiting, alongside the road to get you. If I was a Russian conscript being told, "Hey, you've got 2 weeks of training, go, take Bakhmut," I just shoot myself and save everybody the trouble, because this is one of those locations which, very much similar to Severodonetsk, could become an absolute bloodbath for Russian forces, but the situation is vastly different than the way it was in Severodonetsk in terms of who has the advantage here. Now it would be the Russians crossing rivers and having to supply. But south of Bakhmut, real quick, Optin, Ivanrad, immediately to the south of Bakhmut in the suburbs. Situation here, World War I style trenches, almost artillery, very close. The Ukrainians broadly control the northern half of these towns. The Russians have forces in the south. As fact, we're looking at Optin, you might notice there's a larger residential area, some forested, and then what looks like a bunch of warehouses. The Russians are in those warehouses, and then I want to say it's less than 3/4 of a kilometer or so, less than 3/4 of a mile. You have the Ukrainians, and they're both shelling each other there, so we know they still have positions. There is essentially artillery knife fighting distance, but the Russians have been unable to push through. Thus far, it seems the whole goal is that they want to push up and out, open up another flank into Bakhmut. Thus far, this hasn't happened yet. Moving to the southwest, across the river, we've seen Russian forces continuing attempts through Clishchiivka. The whole purpose of this, if we can zoom out a little bit, is that Russian troops want to flank around Bakhmut to the west. There's also other towns and other cities here, but broadly speaking, this has been stated by the Russians. Their original plan was that they would surround Bakhmut from at least 3 sides and then storm into it with their stormtroopers or what have you, and they'd be able to just crush the city. Obviously, hasn't gone quite as according to plan, but they're still trying to move around to the west. So Russian artillery shelling has increased on the supply route leading west into Bakhmut. They do not physically control the highway. Far from it. They're not exactly making massive success, as they seem to claim. But keep an eye on it here because the situation remains challenging. And with that, just because we have other areas to hit, we might move on unless there's something specifically about Kyiv.
I just marked it. These two towns are vitally important for the defense of Bakhmut, and that's why these, like Clishchiivka, is so important, because it's protecting those two. And that's all I have to say. Chesed in particular.
So can you show the zoom in and do the you did with the elevation, so we can see is there elevation difference?
Where did I go? I just teleported. Okay.
Oh, this is a large dick.
Yeah.
Sticking around.
Yeah, there's a bit of a hump.
So it's elevation, top of elevation, plateau. How you call this?
I would just call it a hill personally. It's elevation is about 60 meters above the rest.
So just pause over here. So the Bakhmut, most of the Bakhmut lies on. This is absolutely perfect picture, picture that shows the most of the Bakhmut lies on the right side of the river. If you're looking from over here, right? And there is a river dividing it. But at the same time, this river also gives you the elevation points, right? The difference is really large, and there is, if anyone would have a chance to try to storm through this river, if you go just a bit, just click your middle mouse button and move back, and more. No, this just anyway.
Yep.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so you understood. I think we showed you in no matter what no matter what happens, you have seen the elevation difference, and the elevation difference goes through the river, and if Ukraine, this is absolute pullback for Ukraine, and it's I don't think it would be something that would be tremendous and bad for Ukraine. Pull back and build the fortifications over the river. And this is what Andrew have showed right now. If can you right now zoom back and not zoom back? I'm sorry, like pull down and show the difference of the elevation between the sides. So people, so this is the Bakhmut itself.
Yeah, and the river is like here, right?
So as you can see, the rest of the Bakhmut is like on the lower ground.
Yeah.
And and if you just pull back, I don't know how to say differently. Just imagine that you walk back right now. Yeah, exactly. Just keep doing that. Yeah, walk back from here. Just walk back. No, not zoom back. Just walk. Yeah, but you were it actually worked pretty well. So you can see that this there is this black line. If you see there's a black line.
Yeah, I think that's a train.
Yep, that gives you like a cutting line under which like it's a defensive line that can be built, and the elevation gives you so much advantages that I just don't see that. I mean, Russians can pull into this, and they can waste all their troops, but they will still be stuck over there, right?
Yeah,
I just don't see them moving any further.
the city is gonna last a long time. Like it's this is not even close to ending. There's this there's gonna be a lot of battles in the city, I think. Hopefully they don't enter the city. I would prefer the battles to be on the outskirts. To be nicer. But
yeah, there is like we're not on that stage because there is a river. If you zoom in, there is a river that goes through the city, and we're not. This black line was not the river. This is the river.
Yeah.
That they would have to cross, and it gives so much advantages that we're just talking about absolute that elevation that that we highlighted a minute ago.
Yep.
It's just an absolute like advantage that Russians will not be able to push through.
Okay.
But there is also a river through it that is another huge blocking point for them that they will not be able to cross that easily.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. Yeah, I'm sorry. Once again, I apologize.
It's a bit of a longer one tonight, guys, but it's great content, so I think that's what matters. So we can go to another area we could talk a lot about. Donetsk, Luhansk occupied regions, maybe just real quick around Pisky. So Russian and Ukrainian forces continue to fight to the northwest of Pisky as Russian troops are continuing to deal with the Ukrainian counteroffensive from Pervomaisk in recent weeks, also intruding on Russian forces who were attempting attacks towards Vodyan. The Russian goal here appears to be to cross the river to the north, Vodyan, and then flank the city of Avdiivka from the west, which is a long contested Ukrainian city heavily shelled by Russian forces, with no Ukraine major loss of territory in several months. This is basically okay. Well, yeah. So that translates to a couple of things. Thank you. But this is where the front lines have been since 2014. Broadly speaking, we are immediately there. Russian troops attempted to surge out to take Avdiivka. Haven't been able to. Pounding the city every day with artillery, not really getting them anywhere. But there are talks that Putin had placed the same importance on Avdiivka as he had on Bakhmut, as he had on Severodonetsk, back when the battle for Severodonetsk was a thing. And it hasn't really materially changed since then. They're just not being broadly successful, which is a good thing. And then there was a Ukrainian counteroffensive that basically undid several months of Russian gains in this area. Very, very gradual gains up the highway. In a matter of a couple days, they were fighting back around Pisky again. So,
Russia
it's
Russia had pushed up to like here, in Pervomaisky, and Ukraine pushed them all the way back. And what's funny is that every time they got pushed back, Russia would publish a video about their advances, and so all their advances were in the wrong direction. But that's Russia for you.
Yeah. How do you have it line? The lips are to the southwest of Pervomaisky, however, it does appear the Russian forces are making some gains across the open fields.
Yeah,
The exact goal, exact desire, what they're doing here, couldn't tell you. It seems like they're just sort of sweeping west. Maybe they're trying to push up towards Pervomaisky from another area. Maybe they're trying to menace.
no,
But go ahead, sorry.
their goal is okay. First, they took these two positions. I believe this one here is called Oasis. I think that's the name of the position. But anyways, Russia took it like 2.5 months ago, and then Ukraine took it back, and then Russia took it back again today, or yesterday actually. But so Russia's goal is to flank Krasnohorivka. They want to take Krasnohorivka and then wrap around Marinka and just basically take this whole area. That's their goal. They want to just go like that.
Right.
Good luck.
So, yeah. Speaking of good luck, I guess we can move down to Marinka, which is frankly a rather challenging situation right now. We're talking the same way I was talking about knife fights before. Artillery landing within 2 blocks of other side's artillery. So this sort of residential area, very fierce fighting. Those same sort of large style, frankly, Eastern European, Soviet style apartment buildings. A lot of them have been razed to the ground.
So
there's some videos that have come out of here.
There is almost nothing left of it. It's almost destroyed to the rubble. They have been shelling it from the first day of when. This is the. If you look at the line of conflict at the start of the invasion on February 2014, sorry, 2022.
Yeah, it's basically was at this like pond right here, so it was like right here.
Yeah. So, they pushed through it the destruction of absolutely every single apartment building, every single block, and there is this area is, if you can imagine, Bakhmut and Mariupol. It's just not very popular and people are not talking about it that much. But this area is devastated so much that it's just insane. I've seen too many videos from my friends because my former commander was holding this line, his platoon, and he's been sending me videos daily. This was when everyone was focused on Kyiv, and they have been destroying the entire city. It was like endless shelling, endless those incendiary munitions, and there is nothing left. In this area, there is nothing left. It's just totally destroyed area. And he said, like, I remember talking with him, and he said, like, we see tanks moving. We see everything moving. They're just shelling it for no reason. We have no positions over there, but they just kept shelling it, and that's how they moved it. And this is just insane. It's worse than this area. is like Bakhmut is around, like the Bakhmut is having what this area had for the past 6 months. It just did not get too much attention.
Yeah, I have a video of
Is that the one with the tank?
If you have a video, yeah, I'd appreciate it that if you should. Is that repeated?
Can you see it? You can see it, right?
Yeah, we can see it. Is it where is it from?
This is Marinka.
Yeah, so this is I cannot verify it or deny it, but that's basically how it looks like. That's how they advanced. And the idea here is not that it's all uh, you see destroyed buildings. The idea here is that there is a Russian tank just firing randomly.
Yeah, that video is filmed like right here.
Yeah. It's a so with that, we can sort of move. And these are more sort of general stuff. These have been the hottest areas of the fight we've been talking about so far. So moving to Mariupol, real briefly. Russian riot police from St. Petersburg have arrived and been deployed in Mariupol, where they're being tasked with suppressing dissent or any wide scale protests, which have happened a couple times. The situation remains challenging with power, medicine, and drinkable water in short supply, and there's concerns that as winter sets in, that people are going to get increasingly desperate. So keep an eye
Yeah,
on that.
they blew up the heating thing. They blew it. Why would you blow up the heater thing? I don't get it.
It's cruelty is the point.
But the
But
Russians live there too. Like the people who live like
the Russians have some heat. I mean, that's where they've been like all those places that they've been building that they use in the propaganda videos, the apartments. A, they kind of suck on the inside. I don't think they're really up to code. And B, a lot of them end up just that's where anything goes these days, which is causing people a lot. Like, there's been times where folks stand in line for just a space heater. We're talking like 1,000 people lines, and it gets cold. People get desperate. Fights start. The Russians come in and just beat some people up. It's a very bad situation. Let's move into Zaporizhzhia real quick. As part of we talked about this a bit earlier. As part of the Russian missile strikes across the country, the Zaporizhzhia energy infrastructure was heavily targeted by about 20 Russian S-300 ballistic missiles. Dnipro as well was hit hard, with the majority of heating and water supply facilities depowered. Work is ongoing to restore both, although emergency power cuts are still in effect. Around Soledar and Pavlivka, Russian troops are continuing offensive operations, although based on Ukrainian artillery strikes, Russia's not making any considerable gains. They're continuing to get hit pretty hard. And Ukrainian forces fired rockets into Russian positions in Tokmak, Berdyansk, and Melitopol in recent days, as well as into the areas around Enerhodar, following heavy Russian shelling across the Dnipro River into Nikopol and the surrounding areas. And I know Andrew could talk about this for a while, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, the Russians attacked Vuhledar yesterday, and they were soundly defeated, and they just ran away. uh, like I don't think they even ran back their starting positions. They just like ran all the way away.
They just keep getting smashed every time they try and cross those fields, as best I can tell. It's not really a winning strategy, to put it mildly.
Yeah, there's tonight there was an attack, a missile attack on Tokmak. I'm not sure what they hit. Um, and I don't know if you're gonna mention this, but in Kakovka, Ukraine destroyed an ammo depot today.
Verkhovka. Like I was gonna do Kherson next.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
And guys, yeah, you ever read the goddamn script, man? I'm kidding.
Oh, and
Um,
they shot 21 S300s into Zaporizhzhia. There's so many S300s.
it's an area they can hit with range, and they're just broadly depowering. The situation there is very challenging, as well. I guess moving to Kherson.
Okay.
So Ukrainian citizens, unless there's something else for Zaporizhzhia.
No, not really.
Okay.
Just
So
S300s.
in Kherson, yeah, a lot of them. A couple in Kherson too. Russian and Ukraine shelling continues across the Dnipro here, with Russian shelling directly into down Kherson, resulting in casualties in recent days. Ukraine continues to prioritize firing, however, on the riverside town of Novopristin, especially in the especially in the marshy islands immediately next to the town, which has sparked some Russian worries about a potential Ukrainian assault attempt in the future here. And Ukraine is also expending a lot of shells around Novkakhovka and the approaches to it, which has resulted in Russia withdrawing a number of forces from this area in recent weeks. Ukraine continues deep strikes into South Kherson, targeting large Russian positions around Zalizny Port, Skadovsk, Chaplinka, and Novotroitsk. And on the Kinburn Peninsula, Russian and Ukrainian forces continue to exchange dueling artillery fire, with Ukraine striping as deep as Hirsk, as Russian forces target the area across the river bay area into Kyiv. The situation otherwise remains very unclear, at least to me in this area, what's going on the ground. And in Kherson, the Ukrainian government has asked citizens to hand over any weaponry that they either received during the hasty defense of the city in late February, as well as any partisan cells weaponry that they had collected since then. No criminal charges are to be levied, regardless of the quantity or type of weaponry possessed, but the goal is to avoid any tense situations with law enforcement, military, or other government officials, because if you just kind of stroll out of your house and you go, yes, in fact, I do have 5 machine guns that I was using as a partisan or stealing as a partisan, it could upset your local neighborhood police officer that's trying to get back in the swing of things. So I thought that was pretty funny. Otherwise, moving to Odessa, the Black Sea, and Crimea. I mean, did you want to add some stuff on Kherson?
No, I just they shot down 3 calibers in Kherson, and they shot down 2 near Mykolaiv. Other than that, nope. And also this island, I can't remember the name of the island, but anyway, Russia pushed a whole bunch of troops here, and they're trying to completely take control of the island. I don't think they have yet. I could probably mark this island red if I wanted to, but it doesn't matter.
Ukraine's
So
been heavily
this is gonna be no man's land. There is no one who can control it. Neither Russia or Ukraine.
Yeah.
You can push some troops on it, but if you push too much, it's gonna be a death trap for them. And you can only push so little so that they're not noticed. And this is just an area for special operations, and that's basically it.
I also heard today that a lot of Ukrainians think that Kinburn Spit will be taken soon. that the Ukraine will get that very soon. I don't know if that's true.
So I can comment on this. This is for people to like. This is a quite hard point to understand, because we all have good, we all like the good news, right? This is another no man's land. And by no man's land, I mean that there is no way to control it for anyone. Because if you have your troops over there, they're an easy target to be killed. So you cannot send them, because imagine that you are one of the soldiers and your platoon being given an order, okay, go over here. And then a simple drone like a DJI Mavic just flies over you and sees your position, and there is nowhere to dig in because this is in sand. It's you cannot dig in the sand. And you get an artillery shell over your head in the next, and you can measure the distance. Just let's try to measure the distance between the.
it's tiny. There's parts where it's only like 6 feet wide, or like 2 meters or whatever. Um,
No, I
this
mean between the. Imagine that you're holding position where you are, and the distance to the where Ukraine would be firing the artillery from.
where Ukraine would be firing from? Probably like over here, right?
Let's just pick the random position. Like, yeah, let's just somewhere. Yeah,
It's
let's.
7 miles.
Yeah, so it's Dietvori. That's even Dietvori can reach that, and it's like it's not something that you can hold. It's really a narrow strip that no one can hold, and Ukraine can operate over there. We can have a mission, for example, like a couple of rubber boats get in, do something, do some reconnaissance, just launch a drone to have just deeper understanding of what's happening, pull back really quickly during the night. That's what can happen. But in any way, no one is interested in holding that. There is no, it has no strategic. Uh, I mean, if you could hold it, solidly hold it, it would have strategic positions. But no one can, solidify this position. So it's just like no man's land, basically. So yeah, long as you can go on. Sorry for the interruption.
On to Odessa.
Yeah. So that's about it for Kherson. In Odessa, the Black Sea, and Crimea, aside from Russian Black Sea Fleet launching calibers as part of the massive Soledar Day, situation in the Black Sea remains broadly unchanged. There were some power issues in Odessa; those have been broadly resolved. And then, most recently, and I don't have any good info on it because it started since we were talking, so 2 hours within the last 2 hours, reported explosions in Crimea and a lot of traffic on the Kerch Strait Bridge. No real idea what's happening there, but keep an eye on that. It'll be interesting to see whether I don't think it was necessarily hit again. Go ahead. Sorry.
I heard that there were explosions near the airport, but then I heard that there weren't explosions. So I marked it on my map, and then I removed it. So I don't know. I really don't know. I saw like a local chat that said that, like, why is everyone saying there's explosions? There's no explosions. So I don't know. I I mean, maybe there were explosions. I really don't know.
Crimea is a big place. Who knows? Um, so so I guess moving more to the general statement, and I appreciate everybody, sticking around, listening to me ramble. So in the last 24 hours, Ukraine forces eliminated some 680 Russian soldiers for a total of 97,270, 6 armored vehicles, 5 tanks, 7 artillery systems, 4 of which were long-range rocket artillery, and 4 UAVs. A former commander from the Wagner Group, one Andrei Medvedev, stated that he knew of at least 10 cases where Wagner mercenaries had been executed for refusing to fight. He also reports that large quantities of Wagner fighters are not being paid, nor are their families in the event of their deaths. He spoke about very high casualties, with only 3 out of 30 people remaining in his platoon after just a few days of frontal assaults towards Ukraine positions. Medvedev is currently claiming to be on the run from Wagner representatives in Russia proper after he deserted. Per Volya News, who's been tracking both Russian and Ukrainian casualties via a number of sources since March, Russia, as of December 8th, had lost somewhere between 93.8 thousand to 98.1 thousand soldiers. When I say losses here, I mean killed in action, missing in action, which is about 30% of the losses, and sometimes that means deserted. Broadly, it means that they're dead, their bodies haven't been found, as well as captured, with another 177,000 to 190.5 thousand Russian soldiers wounded in action, including lightly wounded, which is about 40% of that number. Doesn't mean they were all wounded at the same time. The war's been going on for 10 months now, just about. People get hurt. This also includes people who got sick. There's been a couple epidemics that ran through the Russian ranks. Over the period of November 8th to December 8th, Russia took an average of 2,156 casualties per day based on these numbers. Again, this includes dead, wounded, lightly wounded too, missing, captured, etc. Ukraine, as of December 8th, according to these figures, had lost some 47.2 thousand to 50.3 thousand. This includes killed in action, missing in action, and captured, of which, frankly, as I understand, there's more Ukrainian soldiers in captivity than there are Russian soldiers, with another 89.6 thousand to 95.5 thousand wounded in action, including lightly wounded, which is about 50% of the Ukrainian wounded in action. Also includes sick leave. Both sides measure internally their casualties differently. Ukraine basically says if you're fighting, you're going to get included in our armed forces here. This is everything from police to border guards to National Guard, TDF, mainline military. Russia sections this out a lot more, and only recently it seems that Volya was able to get good sources on the amount of Russian casualties coming from Wagner Group, which is astonishingly high. I mean, we knew it was bad, but over the last month, it's been apocalyptic for them.
Yeah, they went from
Over the period of November
5,000
8th to
to
December.
like 30,000 real fast.
Oh my God, it's just absolute. Let me actually pull it up here because it's really ludicrous numbers. I did a thread on it on Twitter where I basically just translated it.
Yeah,
And
it
well,
was
frankly, there's things volume media.
just a few months
Go ahead,
ago
sorry.
they only had like 5,000 casualties, and now it's like almost 30,000.
Well,
It's so
yeah, I
much.
mean, well, they were saying a couple, like, I think in October, they were saying, oh, well, they may have taken like 200 casualties. I was like, that makes no sense. And I guess they started talking to somebody who actually could be like, no, we've taken a lot more. Because Wagner doesn't always report they're dead. They just leave them there, as we've seen. Partially because they say, oh, well, they're missing. We don't know what's happening. So they don't have to pay. Allegedly, per this interview, which is with insider.ru, a great anti-Putin internal Russian media outlet, the guy that they were talking to who ran away from Wagner says that a lot of it comes down to insurance. The idea being that if they reported how many people were getting killed, then as like a group, Wagner would never get insurance, and so they're trying to sandbag everything, which is an interesting way to look at it. But just over that course of 30 days, to put it in comparison, this is a bloody war. Somewhere around 21,340 Russian losses occurred, and somewhere around 43,300 Russians were wounded in action. On the flip side, about 8,000 Ukrainians were lost, and about 24,000 wounded. So we are looking at a ratio of about 2-1 here, but the amount of recoverable casualties on the Ukraine side is much higher, as I understand it, from the Russian side. The Russian medical system behind the lines is atrocious. Ukrainian medical system, frankly, could be better, but it is head and shoulders in terms of the quality of care and, frankly, the lack of dirty rooms that people are being thrown into to get transmitting infections. But over that 30 days on the Russian side, in their mainline army, which now that they've done their little annexation, sham dance, they're including DPR, LPR conscripts in those. They've had about 11,800 losses from their army and another 24,700 wounded. There's more specific, real fixated numbers, but I'm speaking generally. The National Guard lost about 1,000 people, another 2,500 wounded. The Wagner and PMC groups had about 8,300 losses and about 16,000 wounded in action. So that's just about as much as the Russian mainline army in just the Wagner and PMC. And, there's a lot more people in the Russian mainline army in Ukraine than Wagner, which should lend some credence to these claims where people say, yes, my unit took 90% casualties. They sent us people the next week, and then they took 90% casualties too. Otherwise, broadly speaking, the majority of these recent casualties have come from activities in 3 regions, especially among the freshly mobilized troops: Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and the Volodar-Pavlivka area. The majority of Russian losses are recently mobilized troops, hence the uptick in recent months since they arrived in, September, October. Volya, the news source, asserts that these losses, while Russia was engaged in only about 3 offensive attempts of note, are unsustainable for the Russian military. As a consequence, Russian mobilization has to continue under these conditions, especially if Putin wants large-scale offensives in the future. They've discussed a lot of, and there's a lot of rumors going around in Russia now that there's going to be another mobilization attempt in January, which Volya claims to have confirmed. We'll just have to see. In terms of total losses, Russia had approximately 200,000 of its most 210,000 of its most combat-ready troops involved in the initial invasion. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed about 1.1 million people as of right before the invasion in all capacities, so combat arms, non-combat arms. And Russia has had about 70,000 lightly wounded out of their really 270,000 casualties now. So about 200,000 people are out of the fight in terms of either they're dead, they're missing, they've been wounded so heavily they can't go back. So that's really, it serves to indicate that Russia is running out of its mainline combat forces. It's going to increasingly rely on these mobilized troops because there is no second Russian army waiting in the wing of people who are trained and equipped and ready to go. They sent in what they thought were their best and they got annihilated. And there looks, to all intents and purposes, they're going to continue to send in people who are less trained with the idea that they can simply overwhelm Ukraine. I don't expect that to be the case, which is why I personally have some doubts about Russian large-scale combat operations, but I've been proven wrong in the past. I may be proven wrong in the future. In terms of total Ukrainian losses, it's important to recognize that Ukraine has expanded the number of their defense forces by a factor of at least 6 since February. About 10% of that strength has taken casualties, about 137,000. Greater than 44,000 of those are lightly wounded who return to service. So the overall depletion of Ukrainian troops is likely less than 10% of the total strength, which is, frankly, even without getting into the differences between morale, training, etc., is considerably better than Russia having thrown some 200,000 of its troops into a meat grinder. Otherwise, broadly speaking, it's still a war. It's a bloody war. It's a challenging circumstance. Just about every 20 seconds, there's a casualty, statistically speaking, from either side. So, something to bear in mind. In other general news, the U.S. Senate has approved an $858 billion national defense spending bill for 2023, which included $800 million in aid to Ukraine. And the White House also reportedly plans to provide Ukraine with air defense equipment. Speaking of air defense equipment, Greece has stated they're ready to provide S-300 air defense systems to Ukraine if the U.S. supplies Patriot missile batteries to Greece in their place. The European Union has approved the 9th sanctions package targeting Russia, with control measures on dual-use technologies, things that can be used for both civilian and military purposes, bans on aircraft engines and parts, including UAV engines from any third-party countries, hinting to wink-wink Iran. Additionally, 4 Russian mass media channels had their EU licenses suspended, and the EU banned any new investment in Russia's mining sector, which is a huge part of their economy, with a few minor exceptions, and prohibited EU citizens from holding any positions in governing bodies of Russian state-controlled corporations. And finally, in more positive news, Cambodia, who unfortunately has quite a bit of experience in dealing with this, will begin training Ukrainian sappers on demining operations starting next month. And with that, that's about everything I had. I'm going to turn it back over to Andrew and Constantine. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Well, thank you for coming. We have a question about Yakov Livka, which we kind of glossed over before. The town is likely lost. I don't think Wagner has fully captured it yet. They've moved up and captured these kind of 2 blocks here. That's proven. On my this anyway. So the rest of the town might be captured too. But really what matters and what has always mattered is this kind of hill over here and Vesele under it. So Ukraine can still control a lot of this area from this hill that is completely in their control at this point. So losing Yakovlivka was it's not great, but it doesn't necessarily change that much. It does free Russia to kind of move down this slope, but I'm not sure that's even a good thing. it doesn't change as much as people are pretending it does. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say. My phone is going crazy. I think we've pretty much said it all at this point.
I mean, I think a couple hours of that pretty substantive. I frankly I learned a lot. So thank you so much. But no, this was really good. I encourage everyone who's tuning in. Feel free to let people know that this has happened before. Hopefully, it'll happen again. Maybe not for 2 hours straight
Yeah.
next time, but
maybe
we'll see.
maybe we'll just pick one spot to talk about.
Yeah, maybe we'll just focus in on something because this was a lot.
It was a lot, and it
thank you
was
for kind of
insane. Specifically, the first part, it was like absolutely insane. For me, the part was the you say this difference on the elevation.
Yeah.
It was just mind blowing.
We could do that for the whole rest of the line, but not
we would.
tonight.
This would become a 24/7 stream where as soon as we finished in like Crimea, we'd have to start back up again in Belarus, and then we just run through it. We could go over every inch of terrain, and
Yeah.
I'd have to pick up a drinking habit, and I don't think I have the finances or constitution to sustain that.
Yeah. Maybe next time we'll just pick like one little spot.
Maybe that's a good idea.
We just deep dive. We could deep dive
Yeah,
from like one spot at a time.
Yeah, let's focus on Bakhmut today. Let's focus on something like that. That might be worthwhile. Because honestly, I learned a lot. Because I did. I don't follow the elevation quite as intimately as you do on every single one of these spots. I just look at the big picture. So I learned a lot actually.
All right, so that's the stream.
Yeah. Let people know this happened if you came here from Twitter. Sorry you have to go back there. But I mean, I'll probably still do some stuff on Twitter. I don't know if we can, but frankly, if you guys aren't already planning exit plans now, I don't know what to tell you. This isn't. It's not looking super sustainable there. And
yes, there will be a replay of this. I think I pressed the button to be a replay. I think the replay lasts 72 hours.
If you can download that, we could probably host it on YouTube.
I have no idea how to do that.
I'm sure there's a download button somewhere. You're the Twitch expert. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, Constantine, any closing thoughts? Okay. Oh yeah. So let me send it to you. Yeah, Constantine. If does he have an Android or an Apple?
Who?
The gentleman you're talking about, somebody joining.
Well, it's too late right now, right? I think we will have him next time. I have a lot of for everyone before people leave. I just want to say we will try to have someone from the front lines join in. Not someone from the behind. It would be the guys, someone. A guy's guy or a woman. We actually have absolutely amazing girl that can join us in the future, who you will be able to ask the questions, and those are people from the front lines. And I'm sorry, Andrew Language, are you still here?
Yes.
Yep. So, I thought you were all disconnected, and I got really afraid. Because I have never done anything like that, and I'm sorry. We will have. I have lots of contacts with my friends that are who I served with, who are really want to expand knowledge about Ukraine to the outside world.
Absolutely,
And
that'd be great.
and we have one guy who is just he would join and answer the questions right now, but it's the first time for us. He's just trying to set it up and he does not understand how it's working. We'll figure it out with him.
Yeah.
And then we have imagine guys that we have a girl who is actually a platoon commander, who is not only the platoon commander that, not someone in the rear, a platoon commander who is storming front lines, who is kicking Russian asses, and not just, in somewhere back from the back in the lines. She had injuries. She was wounded. She was moved back. Then she moved back in, and she's like fighting from 2014. And we have lots of guys like that. We have pilots, drone pilots also who are willing to join us. We just have to figure out how to do this,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be absolutely awesome. Just for me, just imagine having a girl who is just platoon commander who's kicking asses.
Yeah.
And it's just insane. You cannot imagine, and you will have an opportunity to help her, not just speak with her, but to help her to send her the equipment that she needs.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe probably not all the streams will be in the format we did tonight. Could be lots of formats. Anyway, this is the first one, and it was okay.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. Thank you guys for listening in. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm gonna press the button.
Andiamo.